Hello, everyone. This is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. This is questions and answers number 25. Before we get into it, just want to mention lessons. If you would like a lesson with me to learn how to astral project or to improve your abilities, I'd be glad to work with you. All you have to do is just go down to the description section and send me an email, ask for more information. Next up, Patreon. If you'd like to support the work of Astral Club, we'd be glad to have you on Patreon. Lots of community there and messages that I reply to very quickly. Ask any questions, share your experiences. Before I get into it, I just want to mention, if you would, please meditate or pray for peace in the Middle East. We're headed down a path to WW3. And I really want to avoid that if at all possible. So I'd appreciate your help in that sector. I'm also reading every day more articles about the possibility of the renewal of the U.S. draft, especially if we get involved in another major war. And we've sent like 40,000 soldiers, I think, to the Middle East. We've got more Navy there now. And to add insult to injury, the U.S. Navy has also been instructed to prepare for war with China by 2027. So any help that you can provide, meditation or prayer-wise, would be appreciated. Okay, let's get into questions and answers. It's been a while since I've done this, but I've had some good ones recently, so I wanted to get into it. First up is Richard Gray, and he asks, could you travel back in history and tell us what Cro-Magnon man looked like 40,000 to, say, 10,000 years ago? Well, I mean, I guess I could. I don't think he looked really any different than we do. He probably wasn't as well kept and shaved. But I think they pretty much look just like we do for the most part. Although, it wouldn't be a quick travel, though. Keep in mind that Europe was very sparsely settled back in those days, say 40,000 years ago. The population of Europe, they estimate was around 40,000. Was around 410,000 people. Now that does sound like a lot. However, keep in mind that the mean population density was 2.8 to 5.1 per 100 square kilometers. Now I suppose I could look for smoke from fires, which would probably be my best shot. Just so you know, how big is 100 square kilometers? Well, I think probably a lot of us have been to Disney World. If you have Disney World with all of its resorts and what have you all put together, that's about 100 square kilometers. And keep in mind, that's going to be heavily forested. So there's not going to be a plain where you might be able to see people fairly easily. So I guess I'd have to look for fires. The problem is, once again, as I go back in time, I only have a handful of minutes. This isn't like the future. I only have a handful of minutes. So I just don't know if what I could accomplish in 5, maybe 10 minutes, just finding a fire in all of Europe would probably be a major coup. But then who knows how long that would take. I think a much more interesting topic, although it'd be even harder, would be to look for, say, Neanderthals. Neanderthal man lived from 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. Nobody knows quite what they look like. We have their bones, but what we don't know is the flesh. There's also a lot of disagreement on that model. Some say Neanderthals were naked and just very hairy. Others say, yeah, no, they couldn't make clothes. Some say, yeah, they mastered fire. They can make fire. Others say, no, they didn't have the ability to make fire. They could probably grab it if it was wildfire from a forest or something. But so there's a lot of disagreement on what's going on. However, they estimate there was about 70,000 individuals in all of Europe and Asia. So think about that for a second. Talk about a needle and a needle and a needle in a haystack. If they had fire, I guess there'd be a lotteries kind of chance at finding them. Without fire, forget it. It'd be probably be impossible in the few minutes I'd have. Nevertheless, I'll think about it. I'll put it on my list. Okay, next up, Creative777. Are reincarnation or the mental plane the only choices for a soul? The mental plane seems so alien to me. Well, there are a couple other choices that are, available. You can choose to incarnate on other planets if you qualify, or you could supply service on the astral plane as alternatives. So these are some of the other ideas that one can take advantage of if one qualifies. Next up, chakra music. If reincarnation is a school, how do you explain the suffering and death of young children? And where does the harvesting of louche figure in reincarnation? These type of questions come up on a regular basis, most especially when I publish any kind of a reincarnation related episode. I mean, look, the suffering of children is tragic and it affects all of us. I mean, unfortunately, suffering is part of the human condition. I've heard people say that suffering builds character or can serve some noble purpose. I know Mother Teresa believed that. I'm not sure what I believe in that area. I have some skepticism. Personally, though, I've read books about POWs in various wars and prisoners in the Soviet gulags. So these are people under very, very harsh conditions. And it seems, from what I've read, that some souls find higher heights of caring for others in those conditions, while others devolve into ultimate selfishness. I mean, listen, a child dying early is always tragic for everyone. I would never minimize that fact. Speaking from my personal experience, I volunteered to reincarnate to help my family and to spread astral projection. And I arranged to have a severe illness as a young child so that I had an out if I chose to change my mind about incarnating. However, I decided to stay. And as such, I got my parents, telepathically, to take me to a hospital. And they performed an operation and I survived. Now, listen, I've lived with chronic pain throughout my life, yet I don't regret my decision to return to Earth. Every day I receive comments and emails from folks just like yourselves who've been helped by Astral Club. And that's more than enough reward for me. I don't know. I do know the memories of our brief physical lives are looked at philosophically after a period of time by all souls. The lessons learned are uploaded to the Oversoul, while the memories of physical suffering seem very far away and almost insignificant. I know that's hard to believe when you're in it, but believe me, years and years and years and years and centuries go by, and you look back and it seems so remote. We have to remember that our real lives are lived elsewhere. The physical is just a temporary school. It's not our permanent home. You might consider it an adventure vacation of sorts. Now, as far as louche is concerned, all creatures on Earth consume energy and give energy. Humans are not exempt from this law of the universe. We are not shy about our conspicuous consumption as we devour the Earth. Is it really so repellent that we may be providing energy for other life? Okay, next up. Meta Creations with Marissa. You mentioned you belong to an organization that suspended your ability to project. Could they also block other abilities like clairaudience? Clairaudience is just the ability to, in essence, hear information by means other than via your ears. And that would involve all other psychic abilities as well. Now, I would say some would call them angels, others guides. I called them both. As I was a frequent projector, I attracted attention to myself. I don't always tread lightly, unfortunately. I was recruited into the organization when they noticed me. There is a strict code of ethics, which I have been known to push to the limits at times, and I have experienced sanctions. They could suppress all my abilities if they so chose in a disciplinary method. So, okay, next up, Mewing Bear. And I get this one too a bunch of times. Could you seek out the Buddha? Well, I'd need an exact time and place to locate him. With Jesus, I had Passover, a choice of 1 or 2 years, and a place, Jerusalem, big old city. I suppose I could go to the Akashic Records to get coordinates and time for the Buddha, but I imagine I'd be forbidden to talk to him just like I was with Jesus. Not to mention, probably get in trouble again. So I'm probably going to table the search for the Buddha. I just don't want to spend the time and then be frustrated at the end. Okay, this is interesting. Truth Fighter. I'm a Christian. Now, as soon as he said that, I did a brief scan, and I immediately sensed that he was a Jehovah's Witness. They're fairly easy to detect if you do any kind of a scan because they're so buried deeply in themselves, so hidden that it's hard to miss. And I don't blame them because if he was caught going on a site like Astral Club, he'd be up for disfellowship, which is their term for shunning, which would mean his family and friends would shun him. And keep in mind, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, your family and friends are pretty much all JWs. That's the way it works. So imagine all those people not talking to you and ignoring you like you're dead. So I understand, their reticence. I understand how deeply hidden in the closet these people are. He then also went on to say that it was an open question in his mind whether I was satanic or not, which is always fun to read. Anyway, he goes, how can you speak with deceased spirits? Aren't they sleeping until Judgment Day? That's their belief system, that when people die, their souls sleep until Judgment Day. I disagree with that. And whenever I'm going to answer questions of a religious person, I typically use the Bible myself. I'm very well versed in the Bible. I read my Bible the first time when I was 10, and I read it a number of times after that. So I'm pretty well educated when it comes to that. So I mentioned a verse in Luke where Jesus was hanging on the cross, and one of the thieves said that he believed in him, and Jesus said, well, you're going to be with me in paradise. And that tells me that it's not a big slumber party, that the person's going to be aware. He's not going to be sleeping. And then, of course, there's the example of the Witch of Endor in 1 Samuel, where King Saul asks this witch to summon the spirit of the prophet Samuel. And she does. And he's convinced that it is Samuel. And I know there's probably some religious folks that might say, oh, maybe it's a demon masquerading as Samuel. But in the Bible, Samuel, the spirit of, talks about the God in reverent terms, and that's not something a demon would ever do. So that was my refutation as far as his saying that maybe I'm doing some sort of satanic trick and these people aren't really dead, but maybe they're demons or something. These people, souls aren't asleep. I mean, if they call into the plane and they're dramatically injured, let's say they were in an accident or they had a long illness, they might be on the healing plane regenerating, but they don't sleep until Judgment Day. But hey, I'm not going to tell anybody whatever. They can believe whatever they like. However, if they question me, I'm going to reply truthfully and let the chips fall where they may. Of course, he didn't reply to my answer, and I didn't expect that he would. He probably was freaked out when I talked about how he was a Jehovah's Witness. Okay, Invictus. I'm perplexed about the idea that the astral body has a lifespan. It seems counterintuitive to me. Well, my answer is the physical body is not your soul. The astral body is not your soul. Both were created for a specific purpose. The physical body to live in the physical world, and the astral body to live in the astral world. Neither is an eternal dwelling, but temporary only, and they are subject to decay. When you transit to the mental plane, for instance, you abandon your astral body. If you reincarnate, a new astral body is created to meld with the physical body. What's eternal is your soul spark. That's eternal. And that doesn't have any image of anything. So it's not physical, it's not astral, and it never decays or dies. KMB said, I wouldn't mind reincarnating if I could choose my parents and set myself up with a life that's better than this one. I'd like to have rich parents as well. KMB, I don't think you're alone with those like to haves. Unfortunately, I don't think everybody can have that. And lastly, we've got Joker's bottom / Yu-Gi-Oh 666. Have you seen the end of the universe? No. The furthest I've gone is about 8 billion years into the future, where the sun devoured the earth. And if you go back to the first episode on this channel, that's where I'm talking about my trip into the future, where I started 500 million years from now and then progressed all the way to the end when the sun blew up and devoured the earth. Well, it didn't blow up, it expanded, okay, and burned up the earth. Okay, well, that's questions and answers 25. If you have any questions about any of those questions, please leave them in the comments section. I also welcome your comments. And I always, of course, welcome ideas for future projections. This is Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.